Welcome into a brand new edition of the 06010 ESPN Communications Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Feuz, and we are joined by the one and only Mr. Dave O'Brien. Dave, it's always a joy to catch up with you. It's always nice to see this is your busy time of year. You just wrapped MLB, and now you're rolling through college basketball. But what big news was shared just a short time ago? This coming weekend, you'll be on the call with Dick Vitale and Charles Barkley to call Indiana, Kentucky. Again, December 13th at 7 o'clock on ESPN. You're smiling when you hear that. When you heard the news that you'll be calling a college basketball game alongside two of the most iconic people in sports with Dickie V and Charles Barkley, what first went through your mind?
My first thought was, and also on a broadcast, is Dave O'Brien. He's going to be doing a play-by-play, but who cares? Because you've got Charles Barkley and Dickie V. I was thrilled, Alex, when they told me we'd like you to be part of this show. But it's, whoever's doing it with those two guys, you really don't need anybody else. It's those two can talk for 2 hours and not even blink. But I think the fact that it's never been done before is the coolest thing. And the genesis of this was Dick Vitale had a game, and I called it along with Jay Billis with Dickie V a couple weeks ago, the Dick Vitale Invitational in Charlotte to honor Dick and his career. And unbeknownst to us, Charles Barkley was watching the game somewhere with, I believe, Tim Corrigan, who's the executive producer for the NBA on ESPN. They were watching it together, and Dickie V said to Tim, I've never done a game with Dick Vitale. It's like on my bucket list. I've been wanting to do that my whole life since the time I was a player. And Tim said, you know what? It's our business. We can make that happen. We can do that. And that was the genesis of that. Put that together. They picked the game at Kentucky, which I think will be a really good basketball game. And Dick Vitale obviously is thrilled because he's known Charles since Charles was a player. Charles has loved him all of those years and what he's represented, as we all do with Dick, and what he's represented college basketball and to ESPN concurrently. So that's how that happened. The fact that I was thrown in to do it is going to wind up being one of the great thrills of my career.
What do you think the production meeting is going to be like for that game?
Yeah, I'm dying to see what that will be like because, Charles, his bailiwick is the NBA, of course. Dickie is so well known for college basketball. These two minds are going to meet in the middle. I think it's going to be hilarious, but I think we're going to hear a lot of stories about some of the advice that Dick has given Charles over the course of their lifetimes together. And I think we're going to hear about exactly what Dick's presence in the game meant to players like Charles and many generations after him. But I think you're also going to hear a great deal of love and respect in that meeting between those two guys because a game like this, an event like this doesn't happen unless that is omnipresent. And that's, I think, what's going to come out in the broadcast itself from the production meeting and then on to the game itself is just the regard these two hold for each other and the love they both have for the sport that they share inherently.
When you think about your relationship with Dickie V, obviously you've had a few of really emotional moments just in the last few years. Obviously, when he returned last year, you were on the call with him. You called the first ever Dick Vitale Invitational this year. How special is your relationship with Dickie V, and what does he mean to you?
It goes back quite a ways. It goes back, a good 10, 15 years when I first started doing games with him at ESPN. I've been with ESPN since 2000, so I've had many opportunities to work alongside Dickie V. But you're right. The first time he came back 3 or 4 years ago from his first bout with cancer, and he's had several. We were in Las Vegas. We were doing UCLA and Gonzaga. They were number 1 and number 2 at the time. Dick wanted to come back and call that game, and he had circled it on his calendar a long time. And I did the typical introduction of the voice of college basketball, Dick Vitale, returning from cancer. And as I'm doing that, and we're taking shots of him coming into the arena, UCLA and Gonzaga coming in, he started to break down. He started to cry. And he's a very, very emotional guy to begin with. He can cry at the drop of a hat, but this was different. This was a weight coming off of his shoulders and returning to the game that he loves and the job that he loves so much. And it was a really deeply moving moment. And I remember he started to apologize for becoming so emotional. And I wrapped an arm around him and I said, "You don't have to apologize for one darn thing ever." And that went viral. The fact that he was so emotional and it touched so many people. And there have been other times he's returned from cancer as well. And I'm very grateful about this. He wants me by his side because we have a terrific relationship off of the microphone, but also on the air. I think we're both very comfortable with each other. I have such an amazing regard for what he's done and what he's represented at ESPN. He did the first college basketball games ever broadcast on ESPN. I was in high school at the time. I'm 62 years old now. That's how long his career has gone. So, I mean, he's such a part of my own consciousness as a broadcaster and my own experience. And I think it goes back to, again, the same thing you're going to see with Sir Charles and Dickie V at the microphone on the 13th. Just a love for what they've done and who they are and what they represent to all of us. And I feel that every time I put on a headset next to Dick. It's an honor for me. He's 86 years old. He doesn't know how long he's going to do it. He keeps joking he's going to do it when he's 100 years old. I don't know if I'd put that past him at this point, that he just might. But, he's 86 years old. So every time you get an opportunity to sit next to him in my shoes, you take that opportunity.
What's your relationship with Charles like?
Met him once years ago. He doesn't remember. I'm positive of that. I'm not sure he really knows who I am, which is perfectly fine. I'm going to be the guy trying to get some play-by-play in during the game on the 13th. We'll see how that goes, but we're going to keep battling to, at least tell you who got fouled and who made the three-pointer. But at the end of the day, I feel like I know him really well because I loved him as a player, both at Auburn and an amazing NBA career. And I have adored him as a broadcaster, as we all have. He's had this incredibly successful run from the court and then off the court. And I feel like I know him. So it's not going to be difficult for me to sit and enjoy the listen between those two guys and try and point guard a little bit of the basketball. But this game is really about, and I think they're going to talk a lot about what's on the floor, but it's really about two gigantic icons of broadcasting working this event for the first time. Won't be the only time. They're also going to do a game in March, but we'll see how this one goes. My bet is it's going to be a big hit.
You've had such a distinguished career across Major League Baseball and calling college sports, and obviously this is your 25th year at ESPN. When you think back to your early days in broadcasting, what first drew you to this career?
Well, I like to talk. Like you, I like to talk. I like to talk about sports, and guys like us, we sort of lean into something like this, be it athletic administration or sports writing or broadcasting. And for me, because I couldn't really think of anything else I would be in love with doing every day, this was perfect. I played sports through high school. That was it for me. I knew from the moment I graduated high school, a broadcasting career was for me. And if I could make it work, and worked luckily very hard, very young, 17, 18 years old, I was on the air way before I started college classes. I was on the air, not as a sports announcer, but as a local disc jockey in New Hampshire at a small radio station. They gave me an opportunity, WKNE, Keene, New Hampshire, 1290 AM on your dial. So that when I got an opportunity to do that, it was like, okay, I think I might be able to make this work. I wound up going to Syracuse, which is, as you know, a terrific broadcast school, has churned out scores of great announcers over the years. Dick Stockton, Bob Costas, Mike Tirico, Sean McDonough. The list really goes on. Dave Pash, Mike Monaco, among the guys who are coming up, Kevin Brown, who are coming up now through the pipeline, who are wonderful, gifted guys, and all came from Syracuse. At the end of it, I thought to myself, I need to go there if I'm really going to take a shot at this thing. And it worked out particularly well for me that I did.
You mentioned Syracuse and growing up in this industry. Who were some of your mentors that, if you look back at your career and that gave you advice that maybe you wouldn't have been where you are now without, their advice and guidance throughout your young career?
It's a great question, I think, for any young people who are breaking into the business. Like, who do you consider a mentor? For me, I always looked at the gentleman who I thought was at the top of the list when anyone talked about sports announcing. That was Bob Costas. And I met Bob my senior year at Syracuse. He actually interviewed me for a job that he was hiring for. I didn't get the job, didn't get hired, but I did develop a relationship with Bob early on that he was, I mean, I couldn't believe it, but he actually reciprocated and wrote me back. And eventually, later years, when I got into baseball announcing, he became a real serious mentor for me, way more than he realized, both in contact with him and when I couldn't talk to him, just watching what he did, seeing what he did, learning from Bob in particular. I think he's brilliant. I think he's exceptional beyond any great announcer that I've ever. I mean, he's amazing. But there are a lot of guys that I looked at and tried to learn from and steal from. Certainly, Al Michaels was one of them. Vin Scully on the baseball side. If you're not stealing from Vin Scully even today, long after he's gone, there's something wrong with you, because you should be. He basically invented the art form as it is today. So there are a lot of great ones out there that I've been able to learn from. But having a relationship with somebody of Bob Costa's standing and accomplishment, that's been one of the real thrills of my professional life.
What do you think makes a good broadcast?
Well, it always comes down to the athletes, and none of us should ever forget that, Alex. I think that we're there to talk about what they're doing and the incredible exploits of these gifted men and women. So it starts with that. If you've got a great game, you should have a great broadcast. If you have a lousy game, a blowout, it's difficult to make that any more than what it is. So I think great games make great announcers, not the other way around. I've always thought that. But I think understanding what you're there to do is to make sure you hit the tone of the moment. It's not as much the words that you decide to use, it's the tone that you bring. Have you set the stage and helped execute those moments for your audience at home? Don't forget, they want to be there in the worst way. That's why they're watching or listening. They're dying to be there. They want to be in that ballpark with 35,000 maniacs at Fenway Park, on a Saturday night against the Yankees. They want to be there. They can't, for one reason or another. You have to take them there. You have to make them feel it, allow them to feel. And that means sometimes shutting up and not saying a word, because as Vin Scully famously said, you're not going to do any better than the sound in the ballpark. That's the greatest sound ever invented, in the arena, in the ballpark. Don't spoil it. And so I think allowing the moments to come through the screen or through the radio, and the proper tone of how it feels to be there, that's what makes a great broadcast, in my opinion.
Dave, this is my favorite part of any interview I do. It's the Feuz Fast Five. It's 5 quick questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. First one, which broadcaster, past or present, would you love to share a booth with for one game?
Well, I mentioned his name, and I would give anything to call a baseball game with Bob Costas. Bob's not doing baseball any longer, but he's in the Hall of Fame for a reason. Incredibly gifted. It's 2 play-by-play guys, so that's a little bit different. I don't think I'd necessarily choose a color partner, because the partners that I've had, men and women that have been my color analysts, have all been amazing. I've worked with over 300 of them. I can't pick just one, but I could pick one play-by-play guy, one voice that I would love to, and that would be Bob.
It's a great choice. If you weren't broadcasting right now, what job do you think you would want instead?
You know what? I would be John Hamm in Mad Men. That'd be my gig, probably without all the smoking. Okay. But I would love to be in advertising. If I never had a chance to do this, I was going to make commercials and make television and radio commercials, and always felt, probably wrongly, that that's something I could do and earn a living. But wouldn't that be a blast? You know, the creativity and working with marvelous people who
Yeah.
know how to do television and radio commercials. And I always thought, man, that would be a lot of fun. And John Hamm made it look. He makes everything look sexy, but it looked like a really sexy gig, you know?
One sports moment you wish you could go back and broadcast live.
Boy, now that's a great question. Boy, I might even say the seventh game of the just completed World Series, which was one of the great World Series of all time. Any conversation that you have about which is the best World Series. And I called the 91 World Series between the Braves and the Twins, which many believe is the best ever played, or certainly up there with the greatest of all time. And I've called a couple of others. I've called 8 World Series, but this last one had every possible thing it could have, including bench clearing, which you never see in a World Series. Playoffs, you never see that. Forget about seventh game of World Series. Everything happened in that. I would love to go back and take a crack at that. I thought the guys did a marvelous job on that, Joe and Smoltzy. But boy, any baseball announcer worth his salt would tell you, give me that game.
The fourth one, I had a source tell me that you are almost perfect, if not perfect, at determining a baby gender. Can you tell me the backstory here, and can you give some insight if it is still perfect?
People are going to laugh, but I have never missed. I don't know why. I don't know how. This goes back 15, 20 years. A colleague said, hey, I want you to meet my wife. We're expecting next month. And I looked at her and I said, oh, you guys are going to have a boy. And they went, well, we don't know yet. And I said, okay, I won't blow it for you because this isn't official, but I think you're going to have a boy. Well, they had a boy. My wife happened to be nearby, and she said, hey, why don't you try that with so-and-so down the street? Tried it again. I said, you're going to have a little girl. They had a little girl. This goes back, again, almost 2 decades. I've never missed. Can't find a way to make 1 red cent on this. It's one of those things, skill, if you call it, whatever. I don't know, but I never miss. I don't know why. And people say, oh, it must be because, one sits higher than the other. I'm like, no, it's just a feeling. There are only a few people in the world that have it. I've got it, whatever it is. So if I can find a way to turn this into a money-making proposition, God bless. If you have an idea, let me know. But it's the truth. I've never missed, not even one time.
So whenever you're done broadcasting many years from now,
Yes.
I think you should go into, the gender reveal business.
Yes.
And it's going to be, you can call Dave O'Brien to determine,
right.
If you're having a boy or girl.
It will save thousands of dollars in doctor fees. And, you don't have to go and have any work done. Just, if I'm allowed, I'll put my hand on the belly. I always ask, but I don't have to do that. And it's just, it's incredible. It's the only talent I think I really have that was God given. And I'm gonna keep doing it until people tell me to stop. So.
Well, Dave, the last question for you. I think your second best talent is this. You give one of, if not the best, Vin Scully impression. Can you give the audience a little look into just how gifted you are with the Scully impression?
I don't know how well, Alex, it'll translate here onto the podcast, but if you picture Dodger Stadium on a beautiful night in the middle of the summer and harken back to Vin Scully on the radio, it might sound something like this. So it's a gorgeous night here in the City of Angels, and the Dodgers are taking on the San Francisco Giants. This is game number 1 of a gigantic series. We're expecting 55,000 souls here in the City of Angels, and the first pitch is just moments away, hoping you will join us right here at Dodger Stadium. So something like that.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the best Vin Scully impression. I'll go on the record and say that.
He is the best who ever did anything. Any imitation's a pale impression, but just remarkable. And he was also such a sweetheart to when I was a young announcer, to guys like me coming up. He treated us like we actually belonged. He used to call me Davey. He said, "So Davey, tell me about this lefty you guys are using tonight. He's got a pretty good curveball. From what I understand, he throws about." And you'd be like, "Vince Scully's asking me about our lefty? I mean, what am I? I mean, after I was done being tongue-tied, I explained, I don't belong on the same earth that you do." But he couldn't have been a sweeter, nicer gentleman, and miss him very much.
Well, Dave, it's always great catching up with you, and thanks so much for the time today to come on the podcast. Have a great call. I can't wait for this game with you, Dickie V, and Charles. It's going to be so much fun. Thanks again for your time for coming on today.
Can't wait myself. Thanks, Alex. Great to spend some time with you.